Hello, 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 beloved listeners. This is Adrienne, and we have a conversation coming to you now with the one and only Norma Wong. We have spoken with her before. We're really excited to get to speak with her again. And just to give some context of when this conversation happened, because everything is moving so quickly in our current timeline, we talked with Norma in mid-January, around January 16th. And you will hear more sounds than you normally hear because Norma is speaking to us from Hawaii, where there's not a ton of barrier between indoor and outdoor. So there's just going to be some beautiful sounds of real life unfolding around her as she's speaking to us. And we just wanted you to know that, to just understand that that's what's happening. We knew it was happening. There's no mistakes. There's just a beautiful conversation. Sending you so much love. Enjoy.
I'm Autumn Brown, front woman of the soul pop band Autumn, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements, living on Dakota and Anishinaabe land, currently known as Minneapolis. Coming to you from occupied Minneapolis, where we are under siege by federal law enforcement.
And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, a luscious Black queer witch writer auntie, an apocalyptic cosmic optimist, and a gardener of healing ideas. I live in the land of the Okanagan, Shakori, Squirure, Tuscarora, Eno, and Lumbee peoples, currently known as Durham, where we also have Mimas who don't mess around with these ice people.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World,
our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity.
As a reminder, we have no ads. We are completely listener supported.
So you can join our Patreon for exclusive content. And today we are very excited to be back with you and back with a dear friend of ours, someone that we love and look up to and learn so much from. We are here today with Norma Kaweloku Wong, a Zen master and movement leader and poet. We had the blessing of speaking with Norma Wong last year when her book, When No Thing Works, came out. We encourage you to go back, listen to that conversation, learn all about Norma there. Today, she's back with us to discuss her newest book, which feels like a companion piece to When No Thing Works. It's sweet, it's short, but it's not simple. This one is called Who We Are Becoming Matters, and it's going to be out on February 10th of this year, 2026. Norma, welcome back to the show.
Aloha, Adrienne. Aloha, Autumn. I am so glad to be here. It is not a small feat that we would arrive at the time, place that we said we would arrive.
It isn't. It's amazing. And we always like to just start off by checking in. How are you doing right now, today, in this moment?
How am I doing? That's a very complicated question to answer these days.
Yes.
Let's say that for most days, I'm okay, and here's why. It is because every day arises in very sharp purpose about what it is needs to be done that day, who I need to be, who I need to shed, how I may need to look out and greet the day. It's a little chilly here right now, which you will be laughing about. It's 68 degrees.
Delightful. And here, you're in Hawaii, yes?
Yes, I'm here. I'm in the back of Kalihi Valley on the island of Oahu in the Hawaiian Islands, the home of the native Hawaiians still. And it is a bright day. The sun has already arisen, although we are a few hours back from you. And the sky looks like it'll be quite blue. But yes, I have my socks on, and I took my sweater off before I got on this podcast.
Delightful. I love that. I love that. Sister Autumn, let's just follow this, wave from west to east here. Tell us how you are doing right now in a place that's a little colder than that.
It's a little colder. I've got to look. It's actually a little warmer right now today than it's been the last few days. It's 26 degrees right now, and it's snowing, and that's a little bit up from yesterday. It was like 13 degrees.
Minnesota is the place that taught me that snow is a sign of warmth in some places.
Exactly. It's like, oh, it's a warm day. It's snowing.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, I appreciate, Norma, you naming how complicated a question it is to answer. How am I doing? I'll be honest, my nervous system is pretty jacked up at the moment. As our listeners know, as you both know, I live in Minneapolis. I live in South Minneapolis. We're under occupation by federal law enforcement at the moment. And the occupation has been incredibly violent, escalating violence every day. And I live in a part of Minneapolis that has had a lot of ICE activity. And so my nervous system has been on high alert we've been under occupation since the beginning of December, but particularly in the last week and a half since Renee Good's murder, which happened just a few blocks away from where I live, things have just been really intense here. And so I have points of every day where am in pretty intense activation as a result of just being in a rapid response situation. And then I have points of every day where I'm intentionally trying to rest down my nervous system, which is also work, as you both know. It takes a lot of work to process through the activation and let it release. Last night, I discovered that Mario Kart is a really helpful way to do this.
See, you always thought I was being silly.
Yeah, I understand now, sister. I'm like, oh, right, video games. So anyway, so I'm getting creative in terms of like figuring out how to process what's happening. I have moments where I'm feeling pretty dazed and moments where I feel really connected. And so, yeah, so I'm just letting that kind of be the nature of how I'm doing without feeling like I have to correct it. Adrienne, how are you doing, sister?
Yeah, it's good to hear from both of you. It's good to be here with you. I'm feeling better today. Yesterday, I was like flailing about all day, and I want to name the day started with finding out that a comrade of mine, Helen Kim, who I've done work with over the years, and who was an amazing leader and coach and organizer and holder of people, just a long-term worker. She died suddenly on Monday. And so I got the news yesterday. And this keeps happening where some piece of news will come in that I'm like, oh, this is a piece of news that I need a day or a week, or I need some time to be with. And it feels like there's no time to be with it. There's so much happening and there's more news following right behind. And so I noticed that I took the news in quickly and was just like, oh, that's heartbreaking, and was trying to move past it. And then it just kept coming back and like, you can't move past this. Helen is gone. And that's really sad. So, and then having so many parts of my heart in Minnesota, and being so far away, Autumn knows this, but I was like, I keep being like, I need to do something, like more something more something-ish, more than I am, like I just need to do something. Give me a tangible thing that I can do from here that will transform the conditions and keep you all safe there. Even though I know better than all of that, but there's just something, so I was sort of running around flailing and then I was like, oh yeah, I just need to do what I do. I need to write what I can write, and I need to pull some memes together so people can like feel with me. Cause I think these collages now have really become like my emotional poetry collage or something. Like, I'm really like, I can just like cry the whole time I'm making it, and then just be like, I'm just going to put that out And people come back and they're like, I was crying the whole time I was watching. And I was like, yes, we were crying together. And that's what I do, is cry with people and try to put it on the page somehow. And then also gather up money. So, being able to send money is helpful too. So today I woke up feeling like, okay, just remember, you can only do what you can do as one person, and you're doing it, and you're in touch with people. I also asked for help yesterday more than once. Like I asked 3 different people. I was like, I'm really flailing. I need help. I'm really flailing. And like, I got some help, but I need more help than that. And then I finally saw my sweetheart, and I was like, I just need you to hold me. Just hold me. That's all I need. And it was so good to just be like, oh yeah, that re-regulation, co-regulation that can happen with another person, where it's like, there's nothing to say. We just need to really let our hearts touch, So yeah, that's how I'm doing today. And now we're here in this conversation, which feels like such a blessing to get to be in. And Norma, it's such a gift. I'm in this place where I'm in my own writing process. And so I'm like, I can't read anyone else's work right now. And, people keep being like, can you blurb this or do this? And I was like, I really can't. But then when the assignment comes, that's like, we're talking to Norma, you just need to read this book. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay. Like, because I know that it's going to
stand at attention.
But there's something about, it's like, I know you're going to get to the point. And I know the point that you're going to get to is one that will be good medicine. And this book, Who We Are Becoming Matters, really feels like another dose of just such good medicine for us right now. And so we're going to have a conversation about it. And I know it's not coming out, for another month or so, but I want us to have the conversation so that people can really touch into the good medicine that's in this book. I keep telling people, like, whether you read the book or not, the medicine is there, and it'll start to swirl all around you. And I feel like that's what I want this conversation to feel like, is like the swirling medicine. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, you open up the book and you talk about this hand clasp thing, and it blew my mind. And I was like, oh, that's such a good, sweet, clear way to teach people about how our minds work. So I wondered if you could teach us the hand clasp model here as we start off this conversation. I'm really curious about, just even amongst the 3 of us, what our hand clasp norm is, and the kind of beings we are coming into this conversation.
So sure, so if you take your hands and you clasp them together, right? So, just the way it is that you might, when you were in kindergarten or so, right? They say basically build a bridge, right? Basically, you have it this way and you have this way, right? Where your fingers are standing up or your fingers are standing down, right? And in either case, they will always clasp naturally. And they'll clasp naturally in a way that you don't know is different than other people's. This is just your way, right? So try the other way. Try actually clasping your hands so that the fingers are like down one slot or up one slot, and see how that feels. How does that feel?
Wrong.
Okay.
Clearly that's the wrong way.
All right. Okay. So go back to the so-called right way, although we know about things when you say something is absolutely right. Okay. So now look at your thumbs. Feel your thumbs. Is your left thumb over your right thumb, or is your right thumb over your left thumb? How about you, Adrian?
For me, my right thumb is on top of my left thumb.
Okay. How about for you, Autumn?
My right thumb is on top of my left thumb.
Okay. So I'm so sorry to tell you, because, we are 3 people who have like big feelings, but we actually move everything through the rational part of our brain before it gets to our emotion. Okay.
That tracks.
That really tracks.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right.
I'll write a book before I'll feel the feeling. Yes.
Right. Okay. So it's like we think about something and then we feel about it. And the thinking and the feeling could align or not align. But when it doesn't align, we try to make sense out of it through our head. Now, if we were left over right, we would feel something first, and then we would think about it. And if it didn't align, we would say, well, how do we feel about it? And we would trust our feelings more than our thoughts, right? Right? That doesn't mean that people who are thinkers aren't, emotionally intelligent or emotionally full or any of those kinds of things. It's just like where your journey starts and where it moves towards and how you make sense of the world. So there's that, So, you and I have a number of things in common. We have Helen in common. And so when we heard the news, right, I'm sure even in the burst of whatever it is that was enveloping us, we were wondering about what we think about that and what we could have done, right? And we have to process that. We can't just sit in that. And we might be faster to set aside everything that is welling up. And we need to heed the part of us that is still there, even if we have covered right thumb over left thumb, right? That too is who it is we are. And to not heed that would mean that we would become slightly discombobulated, and we would then wonder how to get out of that rather than just sitting in it, right? Rather than just sitting in it, right? And, there's that part, right, where there's so much that's coming at us all the time. So much more so now. We are in well beyond the first part of collapse. We have not yet reached the middle part of it. And we're bracing ourselves. So we could brace ourselves with our rational minds, or we could brace with our heart. Right? Both actually necessary, but not to make sense of it yet. Right? We just need to be in it and see what we're called upon to be at this moment. Right? So, who we are becoming. We're becoming. Yeah. But yes, we have 3 right thumb over left thumb people, and we should now have one of those California warnings on the podcast, right? Right? If you partake of this podcast, you will be subject to a lot of rational thinking, even though it doesn't seem to align with what the world is going through now. We are the rational people.
Yes.
Right.
All right?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow, that's so interesting. I really appreciate what you just named, Norma, about we're past the beginning of the collapse, but we haven't yet reached the middle part, and we're bracing for it. And the way that you just put that in relationship with like who we are becoming, because I've been thinking, living through this siege, there were a couple of moments early on where I definitely caught myself in the sort of like, well, when things go back to normal, or, well, when this is over, and right now I'm at the point in the process where it feels really clear that, that there's not just like in 2020, there's not a return to normalcy that's going to happen after this. Things are going to continue to evolve and change in new ways. And in fact, thinking about it in relationship to 2020 has been really helpful, because it's like, oh, the lessons that we learned from 2020 are what prepared us to be doing what we're doing right now. And what we're doing right now is preparing us for the middle part. And, right, where we are everyone's kind of looking at Minneapolis being like, whoa, how are people doing that? And we're like, yeah. And what we're doing right now is preparing us for something else that we're going to be doing that's going to be even further along the spectrum of courage, I think, than what any of us could currently imagine, given how scary things are. And I think it's who we're becoming always feels like a thing that we assign after the fact. And there's something that you're doing in this book. I haven't gotten to finish reading it yet because right after we received it is when everything happened.
Absolutely.
But I got a couple of chapters in, and I just have the sense that you're doing something different with the timeline of becoming.
So there's a thing about if we choose to, right? If we are going to be conscious, right? Conscious rather than just present, which is a thing that I talk about, right?
Yeah.
If you're present, then things that are happening happen and we are witness to what's happening. If we're conscious, then what happens is we see it coming. And if we see it coming, we have a chance for our agency to arise and for our agency and what is coming to change us in useful ways and to literally grow and be people who are just more fruitful, even in really, really hard spaces. Most people are going to listen to this as a podcast, and so they're not going to see the images of us, But what I really, truly loved and made my day, Autumn, is that when your camera went on, there you were in your full glory, fingertips matching your lips. Right? It's like how we arrive and are in it, okay, matters to ourselves and to other beings, right? It really matters, right? And there's this part where we have a shot because of how horrible it is. There's a paradox around this, right? Because it is so horrible, we who are becoming may very well be becoming because we are the people who are being mutually othered. And we have a chance now, right, to not see ourselves as individuals, but to see ourselves as in the commons, right, in the commons, along with the places that we're in. A floaty, inflatable, pink dinosaur in Portland informs what is now happening, right?
Right.
This is good.
So,
This actually ties in really beautifully to what I wanted to ask you next about who we are and how it shapes each other. So my friend Prentice Hemphill wrote a book that came out last year called What It Takes to Heal. And in that book, they said, they refer to something called the transitional character, and they reframed it as the transformational character. And they're the one person, like in a family or in a community, who starts to instigate change. Who's like, I don't fit, and I need something has to change. I have to push back against it. I have to bring something new in. I'm going to change, and hopefully you'll come with me. We'll see. In this book, in Who We Are Becoming Matters, you say, quote, there is a choice, and we really, really need some people to choose right now. What are we choosing into to move beyond what we are comfortable about and what it is we know, to stretch into what we don't yet know, to evolve and become the humans these times and this earth requires of us, to choose not to settle for what we know, end quote. And so I wanted to hone in there on the some people of that. because
Yes.
I really identify with the some people, like it is hard to choose the unknown path, but that's the one that's, that glows in the dark to me. And I wondered for you, what are some of the qualities that you're noticing in the some people?
That is the proposition, right? The aspect of whether something stirs in you, something is calling. And I believe actually right now in this country, but even beyond the borders of this place, right, globally, that yes, something stirs. And that stirring is not only a reaction to, which is really important. It's really important that we don't conflate just a reaction to arising, right? So it's like some people became bread makers during the pandemic. I don't happen to be one of those because I'm more of a cook, right? And cooks and bakers, well, we're just different people. We're just different people. Some of,
It's
okay?
true. Bakers like to measure, cooks like to flare.
Yeah, riff, right? We riff. Yeah. So I riff, and in a purely rational way, of course. And the aspect of what I think I do know about baking, okay, is that it matters whether yeast is present.
Mm.
Okay. So for those things that you wish to arise, it matters whether yeast is present, but it also matters what kind of yeast you have.
Mm.
So the kind that you grow your own, or that you are growing like a starter for sourdough, will be different in place to place and will be about the way in which you have cared for it, rather than the stuff that you buy in the store that may be slightly beyond the expiration date, and you rip it open, right? And with a prayer, right? You're hoping it still works. Okay?
Mhm.
All right, okay. And then you might actually make the water a little too warm because you're too anxious to make it work, right? Rather than just with care bringing it about those conditions. And we're in both circumstances right now. But it's really important, right, that we tend to the being that is arising. And we tend to the being that's arising. There's a paradox around that care and also the outer edge of your courage, which is pushing into the outer edge of your courage while really, really being in care, seeing everything that is around you, having your wits about you, being in community with each other, not just as individuals gathering together, but as a being of beings, right? That whole aspect, right, of that, right? I know that people are becoming when they are dissatisfied, but that the dissatisfaction is about what it is that I and we and they can do, not a dissatisfaction as in, well, it's their fault, right? You know, when it's just name calling and finger pointing. By the way, there's lots of space for that, right?
Yeah.
We're called upon to do that, but realize that there's a difference between our arising into it and our being instigated into a trap. Okay?
Yeah.
And so if we are to become, let us become in the way in which we bypass that part of us that doesn't care whether we live tomorrow or not.
Mm.
Really, really important, right? Really important that we don't become the throwaway ammunition.
Yeah.
It isn't useful for us to become the throwaway ammunition, even in righteous causes. The way in which we have become accustomed to humanity as a commodity, right, as a statistic, is a habit to be interrupted if we are to become.
Mm. Can you give an example, Norma, of what it looks like right now for people to allow themselves to become throwaway ammunition?
There's a part about, there's violence going on right now. There's no doubt about it. And I will point to places that are farther ahead in the violence than we are in this country right now. Right? And essentially, people feeling that there is no choice, right, but to continuously place themselves, irrespective of what the harm may be, and to just give their lives in that direction. Okay?
Hmm.
All right? And the essential notion of that as being the last thing that they would do, right? If it is the last thing that they would do, that part of it, okay, would also mean that they would not care how violent the moment becomes, whether they are the instigator of the violence or the recipient of the violence. Right? They see it as like the final moment. Okay? Right now. Well, humanity may need to prepare itself for those kinds of things. Right? The running off of the cliff into the abyss means that next year's crop will not be planted.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yeah.
People will suffer on the other side. And that hard place, right? If we are in a state where we are to actually create the more thriving place, right? We have to open ourselves to the many, many, many ways of being in resistance. The many ways. Okay? It's like not just be the other side of taking lives cheaply, succumbing to that. Right? Let us not succumb to that. Let's not succumb to that.
Yeah. Staying alive as resistance.
Well, and it's so interesting too, thinking about so often there's just this binary that gets presented as either violent or nonviolent resistance. And I think if I'm understanding you correctly, Norma, what I hear you pointing to is that sometimes in the case of violent resistance, there is like a way that our aliveness has been encased or shrouded, that there's a sort of a despair or giving up that has set in that has made it possible to be in that violent resistance, and that there's sort of or maybe an urgency that you're inviting around the idea of wanting to be alive still. Am I understanding correctly what you're sort of pointing towards, this idea of like resisting the sort of dying in advance?
Yeah, and like running up to be the thing that is slaughtered. It's like we are up against killers, and like I'm going to run to the front line to be taken out, because it's all that is the only form of resistance that I can imagine, or that my community sees. And then being like, well, what are some of the other moves, which is what I see happening, in Minnesota, in so many places, is people being like, what are we creating? And that's our form of resistance. Who can we hide? And that's our form of resistance. How can we persist in our aliveness, recognizing that our aliveness itself is part of this resistance? Our adaptations are part of this resistance. But
how might we feed people as part of our resistance, right? How might people know that they're loved, they're accompanied, that no one is isolated as part of our resistance? Right? That we would have the discipline to take care of each other in such a way that we will always be in better shape than the people who choose to take those things away from us. Right? We will always be nourished, not only in food, but in spirit, as part of what it is. That we're not only resisting a regime, right? We're resisting a dehumanizing habit of modernity, right? That aspect that artificial intelligence would be prized more than human intelligence, that we would give way to that. Right? We could mistake a particular set of political leaders to be the only thing that we happen to be on the opposing side of. Right? And then that might actually lead us to some false choices as we go along, or not seeing the things that have been neglected and need to be tended to. That we're going to need to be the people who tend to it, because in collapse, even the systems that we desire cannot hold to all the things that they have a promise for. Right? And so arising into that creation and tending has got to be a large part of what we're about.
This really resonates, Norma. There's two ideas that you introduce in the book that are like long thread ideas that feel like this, where there's some part of us that's before all this violence, and there's some part of us that's after all this violence, and there's that through line that's holding some of us through this. And one of the things you speak about is the human quotient, and particularly the courage aspect of the human quotient. And the other is this idea of aloha, and a much deeper understanding of aloha. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I went to Hawaii once and someone gave me a lei and they said aloha, and it's like aloha. But you're like, no, aloha, like a whole way of being a human. And both of these are ways of understanding being human. And I think what you're doing with this book is sort of saying, here's the thread. This is the thread that goes from before and goes after. You can grab onto this thread at any place and you can hold on to it and begin being in this journey, more intentionally, more consciously. Can you speak to us about these ideas a little bit in whatever way feels right to you?
And aloha is not that which visitors may think, although they have experienced it. What they've experienced it is they've experienced the spirit that arises and freely moves from one person to another if aloha exists. So if aloha exists, it's not just an exchange of emotions when you're feeling good. Okay? It's not just that. So it's like aloha is that sense of being because people live in a way in which they deeply understand that every person is important to every other person for our collective existence. Okay? And within that, the Native people would include every being. Right, is important to every being in the place that they collectively live in and with that place they live in. Right? So we have aloha for the land because the land has aloha for us. It cares for us. And it can only care for us as much as we care for the land. And by the way, it's been holding up its side of the responsibility
all along,
unrelentingly. And we have been just coming and going and not paying as much attention, right? So that part about that where we are not only in that way of our consciousness, right, but we are alert and attentive to it. We understand when we stray from it. And we stray from it when we're so caught up in our own devices that we don't notice that something has happened, that something that has been said and we haven't been paying attention, or it's been said and there is something underneath what is being said, right? That just out of our mind's eye, there's something we should be paying attention to, right? So that fully conscious state, so that we can walk in the world and we can be in the world in a way that would not only be responsible, but in which we would call for assistance when we need it, or actually usefully before we need it. Right? Because otherwise, we wait too long, we will clearly need more assistance. Right?
Yes.
That's a thing, right? So aloha as mutually held rather than as a commodification, to not expect that, well, okay, that's your responsibility. You're the person of aloha and, I'll just go my merry way. Right?
Yep. Thank you so much for that aloha that you gave me.
I love it and I'll take it and I'll bottle it up.
Yeah.
Oh, and the human quotient. There was you had asked the question, Adrienne, about the...
Yeah, you have like the human quotient, you have like a formula.
I do have a formula. I do have a formula. I have a formula
because you're very rational.
Exactly. I was like, I love this. It feels very comforting to my mind.
Yes. It's, it's like I'm sure actually that, so some people, I am paradoxically both rational and also not much of a mathematician. All right. Okay. But what I can do is I can grok my way into complex mathematical formulas.
Wow.
Right. It's just to say that I look at things by virtue of what its component parts are and how those component parts might be better arranged with each other to serve us. Right? So I have a formula, and I don't know which one you are looking at, Adrienne, but my favorite formula is the one that is the subject of chapter 7.
Yes.
Okay. And chapter 7 is the title is the formula.
Yes.
So I say that big leaps equals strategy to the quotient of human quotient. Right?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, without the human quotient being both present and evolving and increasing, all of our strategy sits at a null state. It can't serve us as much, and therefore we can't make big leaps. Right? So it's more than a strategy plus the human quotient.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's strategy to the factor of the human quotient. And that's one of my favorite formulas. But Adrian, you might be
that was
looking at
exactly
another one
the
that's in the
formula
book.
I was thinking of. That piece, the big leap in strategy only comes based on the human quotient, like how much we're in it. It feels like such a brilliant way to speak. For years, I felt like I would facilitate a gathering, and the difference between whether the group would actually make some leap together or not, like they could do the strategy and they could think through stuff, but it was how much of themselves and their hope and their care and their presence and their love and their compassion, how much of their wholeness were they willing to bring into it. And kind of a less developed strategy with more wholeness tended to make a much bigger leap. Like it went so much further. And so I really appreciated you. I was like, oh, I'd never thought to make that into a mathematical formula, but there's something about it that's like, I think it will really help people to talk about like, how here are we right now? Because that's what's going to make this thing actually an evolutionary thing, or just wasting time together, not wasting, spending time together, because I do, sometimes I'm like spinning, I'm like, there's so many meetings and I'm like, if we're not all, I used to have this, this was my pet peeve. I was like, all these people came in the meeting and then everyone's like on their phone or dipping in and out, or I can only be there for this much, or that, but no one's there. And so then the strategy you could feel by the end was like sparse. It was underfed. It was underwhelmed. It was underwhelming. And it was the least common denominator of what we could get to pass, as opposed to those gatherings where people were like, I'm leaving all my technology at the door. I'm all in. I believe in us. We're doing something historic. And just that human gumption and all that stuff, would come into it. And I was like, those are the groups that, like, when I look around, they're still there and they're still making a difference together, and they're deepening into care, and they're leaping towards evolution, what feels evolutionary at this time. So yes, that was exactly the formula. And it's really great to hear you speak about it. But Autumn has another question for you.
Okay. Hey, Autumn.
Hey. Hey. I have a question for you about discipline, which is one of my favorite things to think about and to talk about. And also and also in my book, it's been funny because in my book that I just finished writing, I'm in the revision process. I've had to really advocate for my right to use that term because it makes people bristle so much to use the terminology. And I haven't gotten to the chapter yet in your book, but there is a chapter in your book that's literally titled Discipline, Discipline, Discipline. And
yes.
I'm so grateful. And I remember feeling my body just rest down when I saw that was one of the chapter titles. And I remember when we interviewed you last, there was this beautiful thing that you said that you said we need a discipline that is not the discipline of ideology. And so anyway, all of that is to say, well, one, do you encounter that same bristling when you're working with people who are trying to make change and transform the world? Do you encounter that same bristling with the idea of discipline? How do you help people receive the medicine of disciplined practice and get past that, the sort of knee-jerk reaction of oh, discipline is going to be bad for me or it's going to hurt me?
So, yes, I do actually encounter that all the time, Autumn. I even encounter it among people who come very earnestly to my spiritual practice, right? To the Zen Buddhist practice, which always makes me look at them like, with my head cocked like this, like,
why are you here?
why are you here? Why?
You could be anywhere.
Do you know what this is?
We're going to do something called meditation, and you're not going to be able to like talk on your phone when you're doing that.
Right.
Yes. So there's that.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah. So people have a binary relationship with discipline. So they think about, well, I can either be a free spirit or I have to be disciplined. And if I'm disciplined, I can't do anything I want.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm.
And there's a part where you can't do anything you need if you don't have discipline. And that eventually, with discipline, you'll begin to understand at a embodied place that what you need is what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay.
Wow.
And that everything else is just like, it's just giving in to your impulse and to your indulgence at the moment. And I enjoy, that extra piece of chocolate. Yes, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that if I eat 3 bars, it's going to get me into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And that my stomach will let me know that. Even before my intestinal tract tells me so. And then if my intestinal tract tells me so, then, there will be a price to be paid that will keep me from other things that I want to do, right? So it's like that. So there's a rational track to discipline. But it's also, it's unhelpful to hold it in a binary. I'm not talking about discipline as a set of rules. I'm talking about discipline as the practice of paying attention to that which you need to do on an ongoing basis in order to be the very best of who it is you are, including tending to yourself when you're not your best, right? So not as a pursuit of perfection, right? But as a pursuit of like optimal you-ness, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like whether or not you have a new car or a car that is 25 years old, right? The best way for that car to be of optimal use to you is to tend to it with loving care. And so I say that not having discipline is like throwing yourself away as if you're just disposable, like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that because I'll get up in the morning and everything will be fine. And that means we outsourced our own care, right? We believe we can buy it from some set of stores to make up for a lack of tending to our own needs. So, and there's a creepiness to it, so I would say that when modernity was not as commodified as it is today, because remembering, I am reminded each moment in human history was modern to them at that moment, right? So at the end of the, at
Right.
the end
I was like, oh, they didn't know they were in old times.
No.
People are sitting around being like, this is so medieval right now.
Right.
Some dark ages. Anyway,
Right?
thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the current state of modernity, right, has many more gadgets and bells and whistles than other moments of modernity. Okay. All right. And so what that means is that what we need to do to tend to our own well-being is aided by various tools. And because it's aided by various tools, including tools where you think you can leave things neglected for long periods of time, but, we'll just go and order that from the truck that will come up the street within 48 hours, that will take care of ourselves, right? Okay. And so all of that means that we have far less discipline than our ancestors who didn't have all those things. And if you did not walk outside to get the wood, then it will be cold tonight. And so therefore, you walked outside to get the wood. You didn't think, oh my gosh, well, I'm gonna have to walk outside. All right. Why can't somebody else walk outside? Maybe I can train the dog to walk outside. Right? I didn't go through a whole notion of my oppression because I have to walk outside. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just part of what I did. Right?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'm not suggesting, by the way, that we all change out our stoves to wood stoves.
I'm like, no, Norma, I'm so lazy.
Right? Yeah. I'm going to do that. So in that chapter, I'm careful to walk through not the things that I want other people to do, but I walk through what I do.
Right.
Right? Very simply. And it's to take the moment in the beginning part of the day where the day is doing everything it can because it reset itself. I think you hear something on my side. Yes. Okay. All right.
I know.
Amazon.
Okay.
It's a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy.
It's very personal.
Right.
It is a conspiracy, but it also is very every time I've ever been in Hawaii, the indoor-outdoor line is not so tight, right? It's if that's happening outside, you hear it inside. So
we don't.
It might be chickens, it might be trucks, or whatever it is. But
that's right. I'm so sorry. No house is airtight.
Yes.
Right.
So, okay. So, I walk through my day, right? And, and very simply, right? Very simply, the universe resets itself in at least every 24 hours, and actually more in the 8-hour cycles, every 8 hours, 3 times a day, it resets itself. And it resets itself hoping that the beings in the world will do the same. Okay? And mostly the beings who are not human do that. And humans, we have not yet evolved sufficiently to do that, or we think we're too evolved to do that. So we don't take advantage of that moment in the morning where we have arisen from at least a few hours sleep. For those who cannot sleep well, we would at least have had a few hours. When it would be best illuminated to us what may be possible, not only all the things we've been carrying all day long. Okay? And so just the mere discipline of pausing, having our cup of tea, don't open the device too soon, postpones the moment of overconnection and reconnects us, right? That discipline. I'll read about that in Norma's book, and it'll fill me with hope.
Right. Right.
Okay.
But actually, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do?
Yeah, we've been asking each other this question, what is it I can do that I will do? And that feels very connected. Like, to me, it's my discipline every day. It's like, I know all the things I should do and could do, and what am I going to do? And what am I doing? And that's what actually makes my life.
Yeah.
Norma, we have in this book poetry, which is another discipline, but there's verse, and it's really beautiful. And I wonder if you have the book, do you have the book near you? Would you be willing to read us a little bit of verse? Something that feels,
Sure.
Yeah.
What feels like it calls to you?
So I really loved the reflection, that last one. I loved wholeness is not just accommodation. It's all really gorgeous, but that last one, it feels like it packs a big punch for where we are today,
So this chapter, chapter 14, I have as the photograph on it a poem by a person, and I hope that you will read that poem. This being, actually, who wrote the poem, did so when she was 7 years old. Or actually, she said 7.5 on the poem. Yes. And I'd like to read that first.
Great.
So, let your mind blow wild. To beat your fears, you have to first fight them. You have to fight them first. If don't succeed, try again. Let your mind blow wild. Believe in yourself. Believe in who you are. Don't stop believing in who you are. Eleanor.
7.5.
Thank you, Eleanor. Damn.
Yes. Something stirs in this one possibility. Will we arise to recognize who we are matters? Yes, we said. Who we are. Though tightly bound in our otherness phase, really what matters is whether we will see a human when we look in the mirror at the human looking in the mirror, holding the mirror. Behind our shoulder, yet another and another human. Innumerable reflections of humans, and do we know what that means? At this threshold where fundamental change may still be possible, before we cross the threshold of the horizon of loss so profound it cannot be recovered, the event horizon of collapse. Revealing as only collapse can, walls dividing, unable to meet, pico a pico, belly button to belly button, alo ahe alo, face to face. Not the same as in your face, no meeting here, intolerance barely sufficient. Acceptance opens a tightly guarded door. Relationship tackles problems, mutuality bears fruit. Interdependence reveals the jeweled core of who we are. Beings, wondering who we are.
I feel like my soul is purring. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Norma.
Letting those poems come through and weaving them through this book and the wisdom of, the verse, the essence of the wisdom in verse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you for joining us today. Thanks for writing this text and making the time to be with us. And Autumn, I want to keep thanking you for taking the time to do this podcast from the siege while living in the circumstances you're in. I want to thank myself for showing up for this while I'm in the process of writing my book. It's the one thing I was like, this is the one thing I want to
thank
keep
God
on my
and my
schedule.
parents. Yeah.
And me. Jesus, Bobby, Christina. So, I'm really grateful for this conversation, and I think it'll be of good use to our people. So thank you. And we will post in the show notes about the book, the name, and where people should get it. Do you have a preferred place that people get it from?
Well, your favorite independent store, I believe, is where you should get it.
Yes. That's our favorite answer.
To date, no one has ever said Amazon.
Yes. No, we just always like to throw it out there as like a final test. And where should we buy it? Oh, okay, good. All right, good.
Wow. Thank you so much, Norma.
Thank you so much.
Shake these bones, oh, I gotta shake these bones, oh, I gotta shake these bones, oh, I gotta shake these bones.
Thank you for listening to our show. We're on Instagram at End of the World PC.
You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/End of the World Show, obviously. Otherwise, what the heck? Okay, so.
Otherwise, you just be there. Another incredible thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're an iPhone person, this helps people looking for good new content to find us. Thank you.
How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the kind-hearted Zach Rosen. Transcripts are in our show notes and on our website at endoftheworldshow.org. And a special thanks to Samira Abderrahman, who basically keeps us together.
Thank you, Samira. Music for today's show comes from Autumn, the band, Tunde Alaniran, Mother Cyborg, and the Banksons.
We love y'all. Stay strong, stay safe, stay neighbors.
Stay neighbors.